So I still remember that. I'm like, what's the deal? He's like, he's hanging chads. And so we're like, okay. I didn't even care.
The Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, it's almost food plot season, Jared, and Deer Grow is one of those products that has really changed the way that we plant food plots and the success we've seen from them.
No doubt. I've been, trying to plant food plots my entire, whitetail hunting career, which is a little shorter than yours, but the minute that I started, or that I realized that I could get Deer Grow back into some of these remote plots where I couldn't get lime or fertilizer, especially in the 50-pound bag, format.
Mm-hmm.
So everything was changed. I could get into these spots moving forward with a backpack sprayer, and that's since escalated to these 40 or 60 gallon sprayers, and we're doing upwards of 5 to 10 acre food plots just with Deer Grow and having phenomenal success.
Yeah, and I mean, with the price of fertilizer, lime, diesel, everything this year, I mean, what better way to get in there and grow a successful food plot at about a third of the cost? Check out Deer Grow at deergrow.com. And we're back.
Hey.
On our podcast, episode 122.
Fresh cuts in the building, Nick.
Yep. I know. I feel like I might.
Over.
No,
I feel the wind just like grazing through my freshly cut hair here. No more man bun.
The amount of sinks that are clogged from you two is tremendous.
There's been a good many. Dude, this is an interesting fact about my wife and I. We shower in different showers. Like I have my
Really?
own bathroom because,
Intriguing.
because the shower in our master bathroom has like some kind of a limiter on it where it doesn't get cold, and I take ice cold
I know
showers
that.
in our guest shower.
Wow.
So, and my guest shower looks like her shower because there's hair like plastered all over the walls and stuff.
Well, I mean, what's going to be hard is like half of our TikTok feed is just making fun of your man bun. So I don't know where
I'm a little worried about the following
engagement's going to drop
respect.
dramatically at this point.
Over.
Yeah. So, well, it is.
It was fun while it lasted, though.
April 4th. Yeah, you've had it for kind of a while.
Okay, so check this out. I'm not a big April Fool's guy.
Mm-hmm.
Did I tell you about this?
I don't think so.
Dude, my father-in-law, like he's brutal, like vicious with the April Fool's stuff.
Chuck likes a good joke.
He can take it too. He can take it. So, but he just had a stroke like a month ago. So I kind of had to take that into account. I realized early in the day on the first that it was April Fool's because I saw something and I was like, I gotta call Chuck.
Yeah.
So I called him at like 7:38 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, Chuck, hey. And he's like, hey, good morning. I said, hey, did you come down to the Dairy Mart last night? And he goes, no, why? And I was like, well, it seems like the door was kicked in and like all the money's gone. Like, it seems like we were robbed. And he's like, oh no. Yeah, he just starts having like a total breakdown. Just start having to pay. Like, oh, you gotta call this guy, and this and that, and you just gotta check this. And I told him, I said, it's also April 1st, so just call you that.
It was threw him into another
I almost
stroke.
gave him another heart attack.
Yeah, just keeping your heart pumping, man.
Just trying to keep you pumping.
Well, not a lot going on. We did kill a turkey on Saturday. Harlan shot first turkey or first anything on the new Kentucky farm.
How cool is that?
It was awesome, man. Just walked up and I had gone out, I guess it was 2 or 3 mornings before then, and heard, I don't know, 6 or 7 different birds probably back there. And so we got out. It was supposed to be, that's when we had all that wind come through. So it was supposed to be like super windy that morning. Woke up and it was pretty nice out and clear. And so got out there like right at daybreak, parked the truck, walked back, and I was like, all right, hey, we're going to go clear to this backfield. Like this is where I heard
Just
the
you and
birds.
Harlan?
Yep.
Carter didn't want to go? Or
No, he's still sleeping.
Yeah.
And
410?
20 gauge.
Okay.
Yep. And we get to like the first field. I mean, I'm planning on going back, and I was like, I'm gonna hoot out a little bit, and like, like right there. I'm like, holy shit! Like, then it's like Chinese fire drill, right? I mean, it's like trying to get all this shit going. I'm dumping out like decoys in the field and trying to figure out where we're gonna get set up because I planned on doing it. Typically, I take them to a blind and stuff. I was like, we're just gonna like explore the property.
Yeah.
And
I'm getting away from blinds.
Yeah. So I'm trying to scatter out and get everything set up. Call a couple times. I mean, he's just hammering on the roost and
just the one.
Yep, sounded like just one bird. I could hear a few other birds in the distance, but we're only worried about him. And it, I'd sprayed. We've got all that broom sedge or that, it's a type of blue stem warm season grass. So I've been spraying a lot of this stuff, but I'm like, it's pretty tall where we're at. So I can barely see like my decoys in this field. And
what would you have out?
I had a Strider and a hen.
Uh-huh.
And it's probably 15, 20 minutes. I've heard him fly down. And I was like, all right, he's on the ground.
Give him the old hat.
Yep. He didn't make a sound on the ground. Not a sound once he hit the ground. It was probably about 10 minutes, and I heard a hen. And I was like, hey, he's got hens with him. He worked up around us. And I could see hens coming down this like road towards our decoys. And, they're nervous. They're not sure. And then I could hear him like boom, spitting and drumming. I was like, hey, he's right behind him. And so he's set up. He's on my lap with we just like had a little tripod stick. And hens are like 10 yards from us. And I was like, hey, dude, you can't move. He's 7. I was like, you can't move. Yep. And I look behind and you see full fan like coming. I was like, here he comes. Is there behind him? He's like, oh my God, here he comes. So I was like, just don't move. Don't. And so he comes down and he sees the decoy and he comes out of strut. And I was like, you gotta shoot him. Well, I couldn't see it from my angle, but there was a branch that was like blocking him. And so he's trying to like get on that bird, and the hens saw us and we're like, start alarm putting, and he's like looking around. And I was like, dude, I was like, he's gonna go. And I just plowed him.
Blast.
Yeah. And I ran up and
finished it. Yeah, finished him.
Damn thing. Those birds don't die, man.
Wow.
And I was like stabbing him with my knife. And like,
that's exciting, man. That's just not, he shot that one with Carter, right?
Like 2. Yeah.
So this is his first bird by himself?
Yep.
Yeah. Heck yeah, man.
Yeah, he was stoked. So it was a huge bird. We had like 24 and a half,
Whoa.
10 and a half inch beard. Yeah, it was a stud.
Nice hooks.
He picked it up. Only like 1.25 inches, but he picked it up.
That ain't bad.
Yeah, I know, it was good. And like the bird was still like on the ground, like
oh yeah,
behind him.
Yeah.
And so
That's
yeah, no, it was
awesome,
cool. Man. He was. I mean, again, like the first one on the farm, I told Skalma, I was like, it's $400,000 turkey right there.
Right. It's already paying for itself.
Yeah. So, but it was funny because like even this morning I had birds strutting out on camera there.
That's huge, man.
Yeah, but most of the time out there this week I was just spraying and getting things ready to plant corn, and we're talking to a farmer today. I'm on that.
That we are.
I'm not a farmer, so
yeah, we're learning.
We'll see how much of a disaster.
Yeah. As much as we're not farmers, we've every year I think increasingly investing in like food plot seed and stuff, and so I've got 12 acres of beans on the way.
Yeah.
6 acres of clover.
Yep.
And
then eventually
5
brassicas.
Pretty quickly turning into like 7.5 acres of brassicas, and
so one thing
and all the lime and fertilizer.
I was gonna say one thing I'll keep everybody posted on is I bought that Tar River no-till drill, and so all of the parts today are coming in I've got 2 16-gallon tanks that I'm gonna put on the front shelf.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna wire all those through a pump and then have 2 boomless sprayers at the end. So see if I can like actually make a one pass with Deer Grow or Glide or whatever. But yeah, it'll be a little bit of a project. But
it's about go time, man. Start getting ready. I'm getting clover in on Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
Beans will
it's gonna be 85
May.
degrees here tomorrow.
Holy crap.
85.
Wow.
What the hell's wrong with this? It's like just snowing like a week ago.
I'll take it. Nick, you look like a freshly shaven sheep.
Yeah, I also got a new
I like glance over at you.
You got a new razor too?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I had one for like 4 years. Finally shit the bed. I got the,
You
the
take
old
the-
one blade.
You'll get tetanus from that.
Take the toilet paper off your face right before you walk in here. Is that why you were late?
Yeah.
So,
All
anyways,
right. Well, you mentioned already farming, and we're talking Iowa today. I don't want it all to turn into like a
bitch fest.
A bitch fest, or like just seem like we're complaining. But we've the guest that we're having on today has hunted a lot of different states, has settled in Iowa, debatably the best part of it, and I think has kept a pretty watchful eye on the legislation as it's happened over the years that he's been residing there, and if you listen to any of our podcasts, that comes up pretty frequently. Our concerns with it is the one thing that makes the greatest impact landscape wide in a state is those state regulations. Yeah. Regulating the resource. I mean, dude, we talked the other day. I was almost kind of like upset that people, bash or blame or get mad at people for promoting hunting, which like it's like the dumbest thing in the world. It's like you get people get mad at the hunting public for like promoting turkey hunting, and then
Sure.
because that leads to
it's been huge. They've been blaming them for decreasing turkey
or
populations
anybody,
in
us for
states.
talking about it on a podcast, or any promotion of hunting, and I just think that's the total wrong approach. I think that if you should be mad at anything, it's not that you should be mad at the state, but we could all be mad together about like a lack of adaptation to like these new regulations, these new methods of hunting that have been introduced to regulate it, to regulate the way that those game species are hunted and stuff. And ultimately it is the state that's making those decisions, and however we can impact those as hunters and sportsmen is
Well, a lot of our
TBD.
a lot of our community, unfortunately, and we saw this on some of the discussions we had for regulation, are anti-regulation, right? They're like, that's
Right.
what we need is more regulation from the government. The fact is that when you talk about wildlife populations, regulation is a must. If not,
it's conservation.
if you didn't, you have complete anarchy, and there will be no resource left, right?
Yeah.
So you can bitch about the fact that, well, here's more people wanting more government regulation. It's like, okay, take it away. You have no resource left,
Right.
right? You can't just go out there and shoot deer with a rifle whenever you feel like it.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way, and if it did, there would be no more deer. They'd be gone.
Yeah.
So, there are things in place in different states that provide opportunity and have a conservation focus. But, we've talked about this back and forth. Opportunity isn't always great, at least in terms of the hunting community, the dynamic of the hunting community, and, essentially trying to create a healthier wildlife population. And so Skip Sly is on today from Iowa to talk to us about some of the things that are happening in Iowa, but also just to talk a little bit of kind of what Skip has seen here in the last 30 years, hunting a bunch of different states and regulations. He mentioned pre-podcast, he started in Michigan, which obviously is one of the most, hunter-dense states in the country from a whitetail standpoint. And, much like I remember, he was hunting 1-year-old bucks. Like shit, you saw a 2-year-old buck and
Rack
you
bucks.
thought it was a freaking giant.
Yeah.
I was looking for 3-inch spikes. And to where we are now, even in a state like Pennsylvania and probably Michigan, we've evolved to where, people are killing mature bucks in these states and big bucks in these states. But there's also states like Kansas and Illinois and Missouri that I think have maybe taken steps back from their heyday. Right. And so you've got kind of this one state left over there, Iowa, that seems to still be the whitetail mecca. And maybe you'll hear people say that maybe, it's not what it used to be. And it'll be interesting to get Skip's take on that. But, ultimately, out of all the states that we have to hunt, Iowa is still the whitetail mecca. It's what everybody who wants to kill a big whitetail looks at and says, can't wait to hunt Iowa.
Yeah.
So, are there things now on the table that could endanger that for future generations? So we're going to talk to Skip about today.
What's up, man?
Bring him in.
Howdy.
What's up, man? How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
So judging by Skip's wall, he's had some success in the past.
This is the best place to film. I come from farm. I'm out farming. I was actually in my driveway greasing stuff. I come back in the house and I've got like a big thing of black grease on my face, and then I just sit at the kitchen table and do this. So yeah, there's mounts behind me.
Awesome.
Yeah. What's in the cycle right now from farming? Are you spraying or what are you doing?
Everything known to man. I got all my fertilization done.
Yeah.
I do things like I evolve every year. I change things. I try things. I'm kind of a science nut. So like this year I got food waste compost, like black compost, and that's what I use for fertilizer. And I did it because our input costs are so high right now to get conventional. Yeah. And I wanted something that was better for the soil. Now I had transitioned into doing like cattle manure and some chicken manure, but one, you got to put out so much more cattle manure, and it doesn't, and then chicken manure is more potent, so you got to put out less of it, but it has a lot of weed seeds in it. So everything kind of has its ups and downs. Well, this food compost is really high in nutrients, and then it has 30% organic matter, and then it's really high pH, so it brings the soil pH down. I won't bore people to death on this stuff, but so my fertilization is done. I put some tile in. We got a few dry spells where I was able to put tile in. One of my projects on my farms is always to make sure there is no erosion, little erosion. So tile, terracing. I'm way ahead of schedule this year. So
there you go.
And I want my equipment's ready to go. I just got done greasing a few things today, fixing some things, and I'm ready to go.
So corn in the ground in what, 3 weeks or so?
Probably, yeah. And now I'll probably even do soybeans before corn, just with the genetics on the soybeans.
Wow.
You can actually get away with doing soybeans before corn, and you'll probably start seeing that across the Midwest as time progresses as well. So, I mean, I like the farming stuff. I love everything farming, food plots, you name it. You know, but the deer hunting and the habitat and building habitat, native grasses, forests, planting trees, that's like my big passion. I mean, growing mature bucks, hunting mature bucks, which I'm preaching to the choir there, but that's a huge passion. And then, you know, I would say it's followed by like habitat stuff and really digging deep into the habitat, which has just taken me tons and tons of time and just decades. And I still love it. And the learning for that stuff never quits. So it's fun every year, and I'm doing something different every year. And 20 years from now, I know I'll be trying new things because, again, with this sport or with all the things we do, the learning really does never end.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Skip, one thing I think would be good for people is just a little bit on your background. So obviously we just talked about farming here in Iowa, but you're not an Iowa guy originally.
No, I'm from Michigan. I hunted probably 10, 12 states across the Midwest, you know, started out shooting little basket rack bucks, and that's all we had to shoot. I mean, literally there was multiple seasons where we didn't see a 2.5-year-old deer, and 2.5-year-old deer were pretty much unheard of in the area I grew up in. So several seasons, 1.5-year-old deer. And then we finally found some areas in Michigan where we could go to the Southern Belt, where it was very rural, and it was a good soil mix of high quality soils with corn and soybeans mixed with timber. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, there's not a lot of people. And we found some older deer where you could get 2.5-year-olds, 3.5 on occasion. And then, you know, after maybe 5 years into hunting, we actually did get like a giant deer in Southern Michigan. It was this is when we're kids. My brother shot 174-inch 8-point in Michigan.
Whoa.
Which is, I mean, compared to Iowa, and this is like kids that are shooting 1.5-year-olds. All of a sudden my brother's like, hey man, I shot a big deer. I'm like,
yeah,
how big?
174-inch 8-point.
Yeah. He goes, it's really big.
Wow.
I need help. And I went up to this thing. I'm like, I mean, I'd never seen anything like that. I'm like, oh my gosh. And yeah, I'm like, oh, and you know, I didn't really know deer like that existed. And my depth of knowledge was like, I got North American Whitetail Magazine, deer and deer hunting, couple videos, but nobody ever thought deer like that existed.
Dude, how funny is that though? Because we talked about that numerous times about, you know, especially growing up in Michigan, we were in Pennsylvania, like, you know, when there was no social media and this stuff, right? It was like I waited for the North American whitetail to come in, or deer and deer hunting, or whatever it was, right? Those were the only ways I knew that like giant bucks existed, right? Other than that, or I walked through a Cabela's and it's like, oh, there's, you know, other than that, it's like, you know, what was real was, you know, somebody killed a giant buck. It was a 2-year-old 8-point, you know?
Yep. Yeah. And a lot of it back then was like Canada.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, this is like, so I'll put an age on it. Like, this is maybe when I'm like 18, 19. And I didn't start hunting till I was like 14 or 15. So at 18 or 19, I'm like, I can't go to Saskatchewan. I can't afford to do that. I can't go to Alberta. And that's where a lot of these giants were being shot. And then all of a sudden I did start, this is when people started talking about Illinois and Pike County, Illinois. This is when it started getting traction. And my buddies in high school were like, hey, there's this place, Pike County, Illinois, man. They shoot giants. I'm like, what? Like what? They're like, you know, bucks with racks, like what your brother shot, like, and basically like 3-year-olds and up. And I'm like, big deer. I'm like, oh. And when my brother shot that big deer, the guys who hunted there were some old guys that had hunted there forever, for like 20 years. Well, we shot this big deer out there, my brother did. And immediately the year after, they had to lease it. So we lost our place to go.
Jeez.
Shot a big deer, and they're like, oh, there's and they just like, hey guys, and I got a call, hey, the farm's leased out now. I'm like, to the guys that have hunted it for 20 years, yeah, they want to lease it now because there's giants out there. Wow. You guys have proved there's giants. So I'm like, oh no. And then I still remember this. Like, I revert back to my buddy who's like, several of them are like, Pike County, Illinois, man, there's giants out there. So I said, hey, we just lost our farm. You want to take a road trip? And my buddy's like, yeah, let's go out there. So we loaded up my Honda Accord with a tent and a loaf of bread and peanut butter and jelly and a little portable grill.
Mm-hmm.
And we went out to, I said, let's not go to Pike though, because it's publicized. Let's go to some other ones. So we went to like Fulton and Schuyler and knocked on doors and got permission, and hunted there. And it was amazing. I mean, there was giant bucks. And in about a 5-year period of time, I watched it go from being like giant bucks and, hey, we could get places to hunt, permission, to there wasn't very many giant bucks in like 5 years. And like every gate had cars parked on it now, and every gate had a non-resident hunting there. And all the farms we got permission on year one, we lost them all within 5 years. Well, we're releasing it. Outfitters are scooping it up. You can talk to this outfitter and pay him. And I'm like, and then by about year 5 or 6, it went downhill so badly that I finally said, hey, we got to go to some other places. And I think we had started actually going to like Kansas and Missouri and Nebraska. And then we started going, finally we went to Iowa. But I saw the writing on the wall even with Illinois. It went down very quickly.
When was that 5-year period of time? Like roughly what year was that?
Well, I remember not being into politics so much. And I remember this hillbilly coming up to our tent. He goes, you guys hear about the election? I mean, that's a hillbilly. I'm like, no, he's like, this George Bush and Al Gore are fighting over this stuff. And just listen to him. So I still remember that. I'm like, what's the deal? He's like, he's hanging chads. And so we're like, okay. I didn't even care. At the time, I didn't care. I'm like, okay, I want to go hunt big deer. So I still remember that the hillbilly, nice guy, talked to us about the hanging chads with the George Bush election. So that would obviously be 2000.
Yeah.
So that's, and that was the first year we hunted out there, was 2000. So it's like red pill though in 2000, red pill, just like, holy cow. I mean, we saw, my brother and I both, I mean, everybody tells stories. You're like, yeah, I know you saw this deer and say it's this, but my brother and I both saw a typical multiple times. We almost got him that still to this day, I'm like, swear that's a world record. I swear it would rival the Milo Hansen buck. I mean, it was that big, just gargantuan. We saw it multiple times. And I'm like, I mean, crazy, just absolutely crazy. So,
but then pressure killed it.
It just made us aware. It just made us aware, like, hey, there's some really great things out here. And look at this. We just knocked on some doors and we saw multiple, like, 150 and up, some 170s, a couple 180s. Holy cow, this is vastly different than what we came from. So let's keep going down the rabbit hole and let's go to new places in Kansas and Iowa. And then when I hit Iowa,
game changer.
So this is where we're staying.
Yeah, this is where we're staying. And
coincidentally, if you talk about that 5-year period, it was like 2003 or 4 when Facebook really started to blow up.
Oh, is it?
Starting out there. Yeah.
Yeah, when I knew, like, in our little neighborhood in Illinois, there was like 10 different outfitters. I'm like,
yeah.
And I didn't know this going into it, like what outfitting was all about. And now I'm like, there's some good outfitters. I have some friends that are outfitters, but for the most part, I don't want.
Yeah. No, we're with you.
Personally speaking, and this is controversial, I get it, but I don't want an outfitter next to me. I mean, I know what happens.
Yeah.
Hey, I paid for the hunt. That 3-year-old that looked pretty darn good. Yeah, he got an arrow. Even some big 2-year-olds with the best genetics. It's just like the last thing I want around me is a ton of outfitters.
Yeah.
And that was probably the main issue that did it in for us in Illinois.
Yeah, well, I mean, the pressure is what will do it, right? I mean, you could have mature bucks in those areas. The moment you put pressure on it, and no offense to the outfitters, they're running a business. They're going to overhunt what that mature buck class can sustain because they need to make money.
I think that's my problem, like with outfitting is, and I agree with you, Skip. There probably are some great guys that are outfitters. It's not like they all do this, but like the temptation that every one of them will inevitably face at some point or another is, quality of herd versus revenue for my business. Because it's like the more deer you shoot, the more money you make. But the more deer you shoot, potentially the more of a negative impact you're having on the long term, health of that herd, I guess.
Yeah, I would say 90%. 90% of the outfitters don't do it right, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
The land gets degraded, the hunting goes downhill, the amount of mature bucks is just depleted. It's a vicious cycle, and it's like, well, I do this for a business, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's some ones that are very conservative about it. There's a few. And I'm friends with some of these folks that are truly conservative about it, where they're like, it's really not about the money, it helps pay the bills. And I'm very disciplined on what the people shoot, but that is the exception. It's the exception.
Yeah.
And, I do it for a business. I mean, telemarketers call me and they're doing that for a business. I just don't respect it a whole lot because I know it degrades things, and I know it's not good. It's really not a good system overall in the Midwest to have pay to shoot deer, and the decisions that get made just kind of ruin neighborhoods.
I have to imagine it's a very, very small amount of outfitters that can be successful monetarily while also being successful managing a better herd. Because, I mean, the two just don't line up. I mean, unless you inherited or somehow own thousands and thousands and thousands of acres that you can spread a lot of hunters out on to then not negatively affect the herd. I mean, most of these guys economically, the money coming in, they have a cost of good going out, which is leasing land usually, and so there's an overhead there. Like the numbers just don't balance.
Probably a lot of overhead in some cases. I'm sure most outfitters are leasing more than they own.
For sure.
Oh yeah. And very few of them own land. I mean, that I know. The vast majority, it's leased out land. And then I've looked at their numbers before. My buddies, hey man, I'm thinking about doing this. Look at the numbers for me. If I charge $3,500 for 5 days and I run this many guys, so I've looked at the numbers a million times, and
doesn't
it's just,
work.
And I'm not, some of these are great people. Some of them, they might be making some poor decisions. They're still great people. So I'm not trying to knock them at all. It's just, overall, it's not good for whitetail management. It's not a good system. Yeah. Now, in Iowa, thankfully, we have a few outfitters, and they really don't hurt things the way it sits because we've got such a long draw, and the outfitting hasn't been able to take hold. And when outfitting takes hold to a large degree, like in Illinois, it's just going to displace the resident hunters too. There's another downside of it. I mean,
for sure,
I love these people, but sorry, what you're doing is displacing thousands and thousands of residents. And
dude, we've seen that a lot in Kansas here recently. So like, I mentioned earlier, we've never been to Iowa, but Kansas is as good as we can get. So we'll drive 16 hours out there as often as we can. And we've seen over the course of, I think I've been there for 6 or 7 years. Jeremy's been there for 9 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what you're saying. Like whether it's outfitters or
leasing,
in a lot of cases, leasing or non-residents buying pieces of land, 80 acres or more, they can hunt every year. And what we're seeing as guys that hunt, some smaller leases but just as much public is we're seeing a lot of locals on public, like in November. And all them guys, I don't have to ask them to know that they got displaced off of these local farms where they had permission for a long, long time.
Yep.
And
absolutely, the locals suffer.
yeah.
And that's where all these bills, all this legislation that comes through, and all the policy around deer hunting, it really does hurt. It hurts the residents. And it's like, I've gone to Kansas for 10 years too. And I watched Kansas enact laws, no more than 10 years. I've been to Kansas for 20 years. And then there was some time in there where I didn't go there, didn't hunt there. I actually hunted there last year on a buddy of mine's farm. We went to a few different farms, and I'm like, I want to see what it's like again. It wasn't even to kill a deer. I just wanted to go out there and get a change of scenery. But I've watched Kansas change, and they've made some really poor moves that I'm like, really? I mean, we had permission on a farm, and it was the year that Kansas enacted the law where every landowner or tenant can get tags to auction off to people, to the highest bidder. So I'm sitting there in my stand, and I've been there, before the sun comes up, and an hour after the sun's up, I'm looking for deer, and a dude comes walking by me, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, so-and-so gave me permission too. I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, I bought his tag on eBay. And what happened that year is they enacted this law. Sounds like a great idea. Every landowner gets this perk to get tags we can auction off to non-residents.
Mm-hmm.
And all the residents showed up to these farmers, because that's how 99% of people hunt, is by permission, and said, hey, is it okay if I hunt again this year? And they're like, sorry, no, there's a new program out. You can buy the tag on eBay for who knows what it goes to. And all the residents lost out on tons of permission. They were all sitting there going, what the world just happened?
Yeah.
The legislator just sold you out, buddy.
Wow.
And, it's like, I don't live in Kansas. I'm not a Kansas resident. I think the Kansas residents should have an advantage over me.
Sure.
I want Kansas to make it harder for me. And to some extent, they do a little bit. But, when I can come in there and, I can get pretty much guaranteed tags. It's getting a little tougher now, but I'm on fairly equal footing as the residents, and that makes it really tough. And when all this stuff, they enact all these laws, like you can auction off tags or whatever the case. And Iowa tried that this year too. It's one more thing to disfavor the residents. And it's like, where's that coming from? It's coming from the legislator.
Yeah.
Who does the legislator represent? It represents the citizens of that
the locals.
state.
Yeah.
Yes. So Pennsylvania or Ohio, I want you to make it harder for me to hunt there. I want you to favor your residents to the point that they have access to quality land. So I want your legislation in your state not to favor me, to favor the people that live there so they have access to quality land.
Yeah.
And that is why new hunters and the regular everyday man is having a hard time finding places to go. And that's actually why the hunting numbers are decreasing. Every DNR survey they put out there, the number one reason hunters are quitting the sport, this is fact, this is backed by data, is hunters don't have access to quality land.
That's it.
And that is the job of the legislatures, to help that situation, not hurt it in any state, not just Iowa. We're not talking about Iowa. We're talking about any state.
Any state. Yeah. And it's crazy, man, because we see that and we've taken a few newer hunters on some of our trips out. Corey went with us to Illinois, and we send a guy who's newer at hunting into public land back to a spot where we had scouted out. On the way in, runs into two guys who basically cuss him up a storm, tell him that he's, almost trespassing, even though it's public land. And, how it makes him feel to say, oh, man, I love hunting. Like, we should continue to do this.
Yeah.
Right? It's non-existent. You're on drugs.
That's what people don't understand. And I've had the blessing lately, and we can get into this more later, of being able to sit down with the legislators, debate stuff at the Capitol now. And it's kind of just morphed into a new interest of mine, and where I'm getting requested to go there and talk about these issues, because the legislators aren't educated about these things. But, when hunting's not enjoyable for the young kids, and they're fighting, and there's drama, and there's, people fighting over spots, and there's not places to go, and the hunting's poor, eventually a lot of these guys are like, the heck with it. I'll go do something else.
Yeah.
And that's what's causing people to quit.
Yeah.
Where I'm from, and this can go a million different directions here, but where I'm from, Michigan, they have given the hunters not what they asked for. They've given the special interests and the insurance companies and the weapons manufacturers. They've given them everything. All the seasons you could ask for, all the weapons you can ask for, extended gun season, crossbows. They've given them everything. So it should be opportunities for everybody, right? Because that's what they spin it as.
Yeah.
The special interest.
Oh, yeah.
The hunters aren't really asking for it. So you go, well, what's the result in Michigan after you've given the hunters everything, all these opportunities, every weapon? The result is in 25 years, Michigan has lost almost a third of their deer hunters. Almost a third. But you've given them everything.
Yeah.
You've given them every season. You've given them every weapon. You've made it easy for them.
Yep.
We want to make sure we almost guarantee you a deer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially what I don't want this to be given to me like easy, like, hey man, you're going to go out, you're going to get your deer. No, a lot of you're going to eat some tags. This is what hunting's about. This is why I like it. This is why guys like us like it, because it's challenging. We're not always successful. Yep. We don't want an easy button for everything. And states like Michigan have done all this, and what's the result? The hunters have quit.
Yeah.
And they've also quit because guys are like, oh my gosh, the special interests and the legislator are putting through all these crazy laws, and then the guys in their neighborhood will get with the other guys and they'll say, hey, let's lease up the land.
Yep.
Let's lock things down. Let's create co-ops, which co-ops are great. I love it. But why are people doing co-ops? They're doing co-ops because they're like, listen, the government is out of control.
Yeah.
The regulations they want to do, it's nuts.
Yep.
They're going to ruin it. So we have to take matters in our own hands.
It's a defensive mechanism.
Yes. And essentially we're trying to override these crazy bills and crazy legislation and make almost our own rules. I mean, you still got to abide by the system, but whatever the rules for that state are, these co-ops are making it on purpose more restrictive for themselves. Mm-hmm. We won't shoot these deer. Some guys are like, we won't gun hunt. We'll just make it archery. Let's limit the amount of bucks. Hey guys, will you agree that, we're going to pass 2.5-year-old bucks and only shoot 3.5 and above? Yeah, we'll agree to that. The hunters are self-restricting in good neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And I don't blame them for doing that. And that is a response to bad legislation. And that's why the people need to have more of a voice in the legislation.
Yeah.
And the last year or two, the last several years, I've gotten so much more involved in the legislative process and understanding how these bills came about. And I also know how these bills came about that ruined my home state 20, 30, 40 years ago. Now I get it.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I didn't realize it, and I didn't realize it was horrible hunting either until I experienced other areas. But now I know how states get ruined. Then this has been replicated across the whole country now. Well,
opportunity is it's an interesting take on things, because to your point, like Michigan, Pennsylvania's done it, Ohio's done it. For whatever reason, right? The state agency feels, or someone at the state agency feels, that opportunity is going to plug the hole or stop the bleeding to hunters bailing out, right? But clearly, from the data of like what you see in a Michigan and you see in these other places, it's having an adverse effect, right? If anything, it's pouring over more. This opportunity to do and hunt wherever you want with whatever you want is not making people stick around longer. It's causing this defense response that's frankly cutting them out of the one thing they have to have, which is access. You can have all the opportunity to hunt this season and this weapon that you want. If you got nowhere else to hunt, you're screwed.
I think the fear right now, Skip, like, and we've talked with, just the more people we talk to, like there's a general unrest with like the opportunity that exists. Like Jeremy and I I feel like we were one of the first people that come on and said it openly. We're like, dude, public land kind of sucks, right? It's definitely getting worse, and then more people have chimed in and they're like, yeah, no, we agree. Like we're really struggling to, have success on public land. And a lot of it is on those public lands, the lands that the states are trying to provide access to. And the fear is that, if you're in a hunter decline, like it has been and however long, it surely doesn't seem that way, because every hunter that's in the woods is that much more effective at killing deer over corn piles with crossbows, and cellular cameras, and the list goes on. The fear is that we reach a point here where a bunch of people are like, I'm done with this. Like hunting sucks. There's no opportunity left.
Yeah. And I hunted the overhunted public land. I mean, it was literally, I can tell you how old I was when I said, I'm going to own land. It's when my uncle died and the family said, we're selling this small piece of ground, small piece. I didn't come from a hunting family. It was a city family. But my great uncle was a hunter, sold it, and then I went to state land. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awful. I didn't see any deer.
Yeah.
Filled with guys. And so the access problem has gone back decades. And when people talk about giving opportunities to new hunters or those catchphrases, and I did a little video about this on YouTube called Keep Iowa Great. And I kind of went through this stuff. Like when we hear, hey, pass crossbows because it's opportunities for new hunters, that's where does that come from? That comes from the crossbow lobby.
Yeah.
With the politicians that side with them. And what folks need to understand is that in like the Iowa legislator, I don't think is much different than any other. 99% of these people are not hunters.
Yeah.
Dude.
If they are, they're not serious hunters. I talked to a lot of people in the Senate and the House on the Iowa side, in Iowa. They're not hunters. They don't get this stuff. And they're like, well, the crossbow people said this is opportunities for new hunters. It sounds great. It's a great catchphrase.
We want recruiting
like,
numbers. Da, 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 da.
Yeah. And I'm like, they say that it's opportunities for hunters. And then I'll just go through it with them. And I'll say, listen, opportunities for hunters. Okay. In Iowa, and every state's kind of similar to this. I'm like, there's 4.5 months of hunting season now in Iowa.
Yeah.
There's 7 seasons. There's 6+ weapons you can use as it is. And there's less than 8% timber in the state, though. But 4.5 months a season, 7 seasons, 6+ weapon choices. There's no opportunity problems here.
No.
You've got a third of the year to shoot deer with any weapon you can come up with. Opportunity isn't the issue. The issue is because we have less than 8% timber and we do have tons of hunters here, whether you believe it or not, we have tons of them. The problem is people don't have access to quality land.
Yeah.
And then they hang it up.
Yeah.
And I got to debate this, just a schmuck, a regular guy, me, farmer, Skip. I got to debate this at the Capitol last week against 2 of Raven Crossbow's lobbyists.
Uh-huh.
And they got to speak, saying, yeah, we want to sell more crossbows. And yeah, we're all these bills that are like innocuous, like crossbows for wounded veterans. They put one in there for that. It's like they can already use a crossbow.
Yeah.
For wounded.
Yeah.
You don't need a bill for that. But this one was a floating tag for late season use crossbows. They're like, all these bills, this is what they said. All these bills are there so we can get a slippery slope. And this is their words. So we have a slippery slope. So, next year or the year after, we can get crossbows during archery season.
Sure.
That's why I'm here. And we want to sell more crossbows.
That's what Kansas did.
And then, yeah, exactly. And it's like, and then we got to go back and forth several times. And the legislators there were, they weren't aware of all this stuff. I'm like, listen, I'm a hunter. I'm here representing a lot of other hunters. These bills that you see right here, we didn't ask for these things. The hunters of the state didn't ask for these things. We don't want crossbows during archery season. The only group here that wants crossbows during archery season is the crossbow lobbyists to my left here.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only group. That's the only reason this bill is here. It's not the people asking for it. And they do it by design. I know the math on this stuff. It's, it's an investment for them. It's hey,
absolutely.
We're in New York. We're Raven Crossbows. We're in New York. We're going to spend approximately $250,000 on lobbyists. and we're going to get these laws passed. We don't care what happens.
Is that
Iowa.
it?
We
That's
don't care
all it
what
takes?
happens to the people.
It's just
But-
paying 2 guys' salary, basically.
Yes,
My
yes. We're going to
word.
spend $250,000, and when it gets passed,
To
because
ruin
we're
deer
gonna be
hunting
full-
forever. That's all it costs, $250,000.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But they're in New York. What
How
do they
disheartening
care? What
is
do they
that?
care what happens in Iowa?
Well, dude, it's so
and they
crazy.
Go, hey,
It's so
we're
crazy,
going to
Skip,
make
to
$3
see.
million bucks.
It's not the first time either. Have you ever talked to Eberhart? You know John Eberhart from Michigan? Dude, he was fighting.
I haven't talked to him, but I have a lot of
You
mutual
have to
friends with
talk
him.
to this guy, man. He was fighting the exact same fight that
In
you were
Michigan.
30 years ago in Michigan. He was the guy that was saying, hey, I don't know about this crossbow thing. Does seem like a good idea. It's the lobbyists. And I don't know that he had the same access to debate it at the, at the Capitol level, but he surely was outspoken about it and almost like got fired from his job, was like, they came at him from
Well,
all
he's a
directions.
manufacturer's rep in the archery industry.
Right.
And so this was, in the
Somebody
archery-
else that was
Iowa-
poised to make money off that was like, hey, John, you better shut your mouth. And, I guess he kind of did
Yeah.
for fear of losing his job. But like, dude, look at Michigan now. That was, 30 years ago.
Yep.
So yeah, look at 30 years.
We need to
And
get
it's
you connected
25
with John.
25 years that they've lost a third of their hunters. Now the beauty for me is I don't have a motivation when I'm there. I'm
Right.
asked to be there.
Yeah.
I'll have different senators and different House members and different lobbyists that have called me, and multiple ones of each. They're like, please come here and talk about these issues. Please debate this. They asked me to show up there.
Yeah.
And nobody can fire me from my job
Right.
because I work for myself.
Yeah.
I don't have sponsors. I'm not sponsored by a crossbow company.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the hunting celebrities, and I've talked to them about these issues. I'm like, you got to use your platform on this. And several of them are like, I'm in. And that's a long discussion.
Dude, and not to go too far down it, but recently, like within the past couple of years, I've seen some guys. Bow hunter is in the name of their show, and it's like I'm seeing like Raven crossbow commercials. I'm like what is this, dude? I'm like,
Money.
this is.
It goes back to the outfitter
Money.
thing. No
Money.
offense. No offense to those guys. Again, they may be super passionate, over the top about deer.
I know.
They're running a business.
I know.
The numbers
Yeah.
can't lie. If they come and say, "Hey, sorry, we're going to pay you this," what are they going to say? No. I mean, that's the devil
where
in the
it
details
makes me
of this.
sick, dude. Is that because deer hunting is not a business? It was not meant to be like the fact that there's an industry is
Exactly.
like, it's great and it's awesome that there are new products, and I want all of those innovations and stuff like that. But like, there has to be a line, and
Yeah.
it's far been crossed over.
No doubt. And, we have so they're like, in one of the Raven crossbow lobbyists saying, see, guy, said something snarky like, hey, the guy hates crossbows or something. And I got to respond. I'm like, I don't hate crossbows. They're allowed in our state for disabled people,
Yep.
for senior citizens, and they have a special season of their own at the end of the season, late season. So, and that's where they belong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want them to stay there. So I don't hate crossbows.
Not in the hands
I
of
just hate
able-bodied 30-year-old men.
Yes. I just hate that you are spending money in my state just for your own betterment to get crossbows in archery season, just so you can make a few bucks.
Yeah.
And ruin our state in the process. That's what I hate. I hate the process.
Well, and the other thing
And I
is,
hate that the people aren't asking for this.
if you look at the new hunter side, right, the group that we need to focus on, obviously, is our kids, right, the next generation. In Iowa, you guys have one of the longest youth season available. So, like, I'll take a step back. In Pennsylvania or Ohio, where my kid can't hunt with a gun during archery season, right, a crossbow makes sense for the youth to have that because then they can hunt archery season. But in Iowa, from day one, right, they could go out with a gun and shoot wherever they want.
Yeah. And they can use a gun. They can use a bow. They actually can't use crossbows, which, I suppose if they added crossbows, and I knew it would stop there.
Sure.
There's a problem.
That's the slippery
I don't trust
slope.
these people.
Yeah.
I don't, and this is their words. They put bills into states to make it a slippery slope. So, one step at a time, we're going to get what we want. So if it was like, hey, the kids can use crossbows during the youth season, okay, that'd be fine. But they can use a gun now, whatever you think about that, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, the fact
It's
they
just
can
like-
use a gun, I don't think they need a crossbow. If they couldn't
Right.
use a gun, right? If it was only a compound bow, then it's like, well,
Right.
some of these kids who
Exactly.
can't be lethal with a
These
compound.
kids have plenty of opportunities. Hey, Dad, I only have two choices. I can use a a 350 Legend or a bow and arrow. You're set.
Done.
You're set. You have no issues.
Done. Yeah.
Every kid is going to have plenty of opportunities right now. The only opportunities these kids are lacking is, hey, Dad, do we have a place to go?
Sure.
Is there somewhere we can go that has plenty of deer that we're allowed to go? I mean, I don't want to go to that public land again, Dad. We saw 50 million hunters didn't see any deer, and that's in Iowa. That happens a lot.
It's a bad experience, man, and they just don't want to go back to that. And what's so weird about that, Skip, is like, you talk about Michigan, I talk Pennsylvania. Like, growing up, I hunted a lot of public land in Pennsylvania, and it was not like, you saw guys all over the place, but between that public land and the private land and permission land, like, I still felt like we were all kind of on the same like level. Like, public wasn't great, but it wasn't that much worse than permission or that much worse than nowadays. I mean, it is a stark difference. You go and hunt a well-managed piece of private ground and then get forced onto a chunk of public ground. And I mean, it is night and day difference.
Well, and what's changed there is, with less access, and more guys saying, hey, I got to protect, I got to insulate. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's the reality of what's happening. When guys say I want to insulate and I want to tie up more ground, then these guys are forced onto this public. And while this is happening, the newer hunter numbers are declining.
Mm-hmm.
So actually on this private land, like in Michigan, where I would see 1.5-year-old bucks, and that's it. Now guys today in areas that are locked up are like, hey man, since you've left, there's actually a few 2 or 3-year-olds around there. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what's changed? And all of a sudden I start thinking about it. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a third less hunters.
Yeah.
There's a third less hunters. And and to the hunters' credit, there's more people that are like, yeah, let's pass up that 1.5-year-old deer.
Mm-hmm.
The newer generation is far better at this than the old school people.
Sure.
My parents' age, I mean, just so stubborn where they just had to shoot, had to get their buck every year.
We've got parents too. Yeah, we
get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I think what's so weird about it too is like there was an appreciation and a grind in that kind of growing up that way that probably is where like nowadays, I mean, it's why we're ate up with it. I mean, it's why we freaking live and breathe this stuff and chase and mature bucks. And I think right now there's kind of two segments of newer hunters. There's the people who get forced on the public, and frankly, it's just trash. Right? They have a bad experience. It's not. There's no reason for them to want to do it again. And then you've got these kids, and frankly, I put my kids in the group a lot, where I mean, it's almost handed to them on a silver platter. It's like, well, yeah, I've got these deer patterned, or I've got these turkeys patterned. Like we go out, we have fun. But it sure as shit isn't the grind that I grew up on. And so my worry there is, does it stick with them? It's not going to stick with these people that are on public and having terrible experiences. Will it stick with the kids who think it almost comes easy? I mean, how many people have you seen, probably in Iowa, Skip, kids that are 7, 8, 9 years old shooting booners early in the season?
Yeah, and that's a personal thing, and I know I'll tick some people off. And I'm talking about opinionated topics here, so I'm sure there'll be a few people in the comments.
That's what we do.
Different opinions on everything I say. But, I'll see the guys where a 6 or 7-year-old will shoot a bomber. Like, oh my gosh. And my own kids, my kids are 8 and 12. And I have a lot of nephews, and I let people hunt my land. So here's one comment. I'll get in front of this comment. I let a lot of people hunt my farms. I mean, I let as many as I can. And I told this to the legislature, I'm not here because of things for me. I'm set, I'm 44 now. I have my farms. I let a lot of people hunt, but the amount of people that want to hunt, I can't take them all on.
Sure.
I mean, there's 20 times as many people that ask me to hunt it as possible. But with the kids that hunt my ground, my nephews, my son, who got a great buck this year, he's 12 years old. I mean, he went 3 years, and his 3rd year, he shot a doe. And the first buck he wanted to shoot, I was more like, what do you want to shoot? And he's like, well, Dad, I'd like to shoot something older. Well, there's deer on my farm they're not a ton, but there's some giants. I mean, giants. though I'm not letting my kid shoot that. It's not going to happen. And he shoots. He's like, I want to shoot an older one. And he shot, like a 130's 5-year-old. That was, it was a good buck to
Sure.
get out of there. Yeah. And it was a mature buck. A lot of people call that a management buck, but he was thrilled.
Yeah,
absolutely. It was the biggest buck on earth. And that buck, don't misunderstand. That's vastly bigger than the first buck I shot. The first buck I shot, Dinker.
Yeah.
Dinker. The second buck I shot, Dinker.
Yeah.
So my boy's a little bit spoiled to start, but I'm very cognizant of that. And there's a lot of hunters across the whole country that are cognizant of that. Like, listen, we had to grind it out, and I want my kids to grind it out. And I have a great farm that's set up now, but my son has been out dozens and dozens of times and not connected. And I wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
And he's also with me working. I work on the farm. This is my job. And my son comes out and I'm like, listen, there's playtime. You can go fishing, you can go do this or that, but he sees how much work goes into this. And I do not want spoiled kids. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. But I'm definitely putting action behind that. No, I don't want my kid who is, my daughter who's 8 years old. My daughter who is 8 years old is not going to be shooting 190-inch deer this year. I can assure you of that.
Well, and it's a tough line. I wrestled with it, and reality was we weren't killing a bunch of deer.
Here's the question. Do you make them, what if that deer walks out first?
I'm not going to tell somebody what's right and wrong. It's up to you. It's up to you. Just, personally speaking.
Well, I'm asking you. Yeah.
Okay. So if 190-inch deer walks out, my son,
he's
not shooting.
Yeah.
Now, I might get trash for that. You cold-hearted, whatever. I'm just not. I just don't want to do that. I'm just more concerned with like, hey, that kind of spoils your kid.
Man, I think it ruins it.
I respect that a
lot. Where do you go from there?
Exactly. So it's like when I was in high school and I grew up in a very conservative community where a lot of people did not have a ton of money. But like there was a kid who turned 16 and all of a sudden he's got a brand new Camaro loaded with a V8 that his dad bought him.
Yeah.
Does that teach him a good lesson? Or how about the kid, my parents are like, well, you have to buy your own vehicle. And I bought a $400 Delta 88 Oldsmobile that was brown. It was the ugliest car known to man. Well, versus my buddy who gets a brand new Camaro.
Yeah.
It was embarrassing at the time, or it wasn't like, hey, I can brag and show this off. But which one of those two teaches a kid a better lesson?
Yeah. When you finally bought your new car, though, how did that feel?
Yeah.
Exactly. And I earned it. Yeah. I earned it too. And I feel like, if 190-inch deer walks out, I'm just going to say it how it is. My kid's 12 years old. He's getting hunting more and more, but he didn't earn that. He didn't earn that. And a lot of people, it takes them a lifetime. A lot of people don't get a chance at 190-inch deer or whatever it is. So I'm very cognizant. I don't want to spoil these kids, and I want to make it a challenge for them, and that goes right back to the legislation. I want it to be challenging. Hunting is meant to be challenging. If it was guaranteed and this was easy, I promise you, I've been doing this 30 years. I would have quit a long time ago. Okay. Got that figured out. It would become boring.
Yeah.
And I'm still captivated with it because it's still hard.
Dude,
this is really hard.
We talk about that a ton, Skip. Just the fact of like, we're like, man, why is it that we're so obsessed, like so ate up, I'm 30. Jeremy's just turned 39 the other day.
Yep.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
And like, dude, we're just obsessed. You described it earlier, like that 20 to 25 age, yeah, we've maybe grown a little bit since then too, or gotten acclimated to what different states are like and stuff. But it's, we've tried time and time again to like figure out what is it, or what was it, what happened that made us like so obsessed to even today, at 30 years old or at 39, 44, that we'll go to these extreme lengths to like, to achieve like killing a certain deer or a mature deer. And it's like, the thing we keep coming back to is like, it really was the failures and the like impossible hardships that we went through. Like it was the years and years of not seeing any deer or any deer that we wanted to shoot, that I think like built in us just this, you know, whatever it is, the extreme passion, like that's what built it, you know, as opposed to, and it's unfortunate, we're kind of talking about two different groups of people here. One of them is, you know, your kids, when you have the opportunity to regulate the amount of success that are happening, and also new hunters who, you know, the first experience they have is like with the new technology, like, you know, with a crossbow, with all these certain things, and it's deer hunting is much easier than it was 20, 30 years ago. And the fear that, you know, or what we see is like, how can these people possibly have the same level of passion that we have for it when they haven't faced nearly the same level of adversity?
Yeah.
And I think that's deer hunters going through the stages where the passion can be like a snowball. So you shoot a few 1.5-year-old bucks, and then your buddies are like, hey, look at this. I shot a 2.5-year-old. And they do exist in a few places. You're like, oh, and not everybody, but a handful are like, I want to try it for that 2.5-year-old buck. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, I got 3 or 4 2.5-year-old bucks. Now I want to try for a 3.5-year-old. And it's never ending. Well, when you get to the end of that though, and you're like, I want to hunt mature bucks. And I have, you know, if you find yourself in the best situation someone can imagine. And I used to think like, oh, if I own that, I'd shoot all these bombers. No, hunting mature bucks is still incredibly hard. Mature whitetail bucks is incredibly hard. I don't care if it's Iowa. I don't care if it's Kansas. I don't care if it's Ohio or Pennsylvania. It's just extremely hard. And, you know, you say, no, it's definitely harder. Don't misunderstand. It's definitely harder in Pennsylvania. When my buddy shoots a 5.5-year-old in Southern Michigan, I'm like, oh, you're the man. I mean, that's a feat. Yeah. It's an accomplishment, but it's just difficult. And there's seasons where it's like, you know, I'm still working really hard at this and I'm passionate about it. And I'm chasing mature deer and I'm like, I come up empty, or, you know, I didn't get the deer in front of me that I wanted to shoot. And I'm like, you know what? That's not the deer I want to shoot. The one I was after, I didn't see him. Yeah. I will eat my tags. And I just spent a year on this, and it doesn't work out. And so it's still challenging to this day. Yeah. You know, and I work at this all year long. I mean, you know, there's farming and other stuff I do, but there's no limits to what I can do. And I do them. And it's still incredibly difficult chasing mature bucks. And, you know, with all this stuff like, hey, we got to create more opportunities for hunters, and we got to have all these new weapons and all these new seasons, all that's doing for the few guys out there that want to chase mature deer and want to have a balanced age structure and a healthy, biologically sound herd, it's just making it harder for them. Yeah. And when you make it harder for that small group that wants to chase mature deer, they're going to lock up more land. They're going to restrict things. Mm-hmm. They're going to figure a way around the government regulations. They're going to go, I'm going to insulate myself from it. Yep. Yeah. And that's what happens. So guys who are the mature buck chasers are going to figure out a way. And by definition, the government's forcing them into a corner where they're like, okay, now I got to buy land, or I got to lease something. You know, I wish, I mean, and I'm part of that. I own land, you know, and I let other people go, but I wish every farm was just as good as mine, you know, and you didn't have to lease up land. I wish it was just good everywhere. Right. I know that's not reality, but no, you know, the harder you make it for the passionate guys that want to hunt mature bucks, you're just going to ruin it for the everyday guy. I think an important part there too, Skip, is, and we've heard this before, I think oftentimes that top level guy, right, and three of us are sitting here talking, gets placed in a group of, you know, hunting is for the rich, right? I can't tell you the number of times I've heard that. And the fact is yes, there are quite a few people that are wealthy and landowners and stuff, but that top group doesn't spend their money on stupid shit.
We spend our money on whitetails and hunting, and whether that's property we own or property we lease or gear we have or sell, whatever it is.
Whatever's going to put a big buck in front of us.
We're not going to concerts. We're not going out to eat every night. We're not buying this. We're not doing that. And it's because this is where our funds are going. So I think oftentimes you hear people say, well, yeah, it's just becoming the rich man's sport. No. That is the only place I spend my money. And because I'm so passionate, I will figure out a way to be able to pay for that stuff.
Yeah, and I've heard the hunting is for the rich since the 90s, since I was a little kid. And it's like, I made $4.25 an hour when I was a teenager. And before I did that, I had lawn businesses where I probably made less than that. My tags were like $20 a year. I saved up for a bow and arrow. I could buy this stuff. It's not terribly expensive for a resident, and to go onto state land, a little bit of gas money. It's not a rich man's hobby. Now, where you make it more of a rich man's hobby is when you put these regulations in place that liberalize the whole system where everybody can do it all. And then you have everybody locking up access. And then that becomes more of a rich man's sport. And the people without the money are like, listen, all the ground is degraded. So the solution to that is make it better for everybody. Make the whole system a little better. And I'm not saying like, hey, set up your states so you have like 5, 6, 7-year-old deer all over. I'm not saying that, but set it up so like, hey, not every 1.5-year-old and 2.5-year-old just gets gunned down every year because we have crappy regulations.
Sure.
And that's what's driving the lower class out of this. It's just like, listen, I'm left with the crumbs. Regular ground because of your legislation state sucks.
Yeah.
So I'm out. And I blame the legislators and the special interests.
I mean, that's where it's at, right? I mean, it is the top down. What I do on my property or you do on your property, or you do on your that's at a local level. The one thing that can change the statewide landscape level is those statewide regulations. If you tell me I can shoot 3 bucks and 9 does, guess what? I have the ability legally to go out and shoot 3 bucks and 9 does, and nobody can tell me different. Whether the herd can sustain that, who cares, right? The state told me I can do it. Exactly.
People will do it. They put a at one time it was 4 weeks of 3 or 4 weeks of rifle season at the end of our muzzleloader season. So like going into February, people are coming, with rifles down here, and it's like, they come down from the city, all these areas that have been hunted all year, and they're using rifles and shooting deer at 400 and 500 yards.
Yeah, that have probably shed out already.
Yeah, and they shot countless shed bucks, and the hunters reacted to it because the hunting went downhill quick. I mean, it went downhill very fast, and the hunters went, "What the heck are you guys doing?" And the hunters voiced up enough, and they got it removed. And thank goodness they did. So the hunters of every state can get things changed. Iowa is a unique state where some people might look at Iowa as like, hey, it's the last great place. And I kind of view it like that. I do. There's a few other states I do really like, and I wish I could make a few little tweaks to them. And there's some regulations in Iowa that are bad. I mean, that, everybody's like, well, Iowa has some problems. Yeah, it does.
Sure.
It does. It has some things I'd love to change, but Iowa's the last great place. And you go, well, why is Iowa the last great place? And what has happened to all these other things? Well, for longer than 30 years, Iowa's actually had a defensive organization called the IBA, the Iowa Bow Hunters Association, which they've hired a lobbyist to defend from all this craziness. And while all these other states, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, are getting assaulted with bad legislation, we were too. But we had the IBA to stand up and say, no, you're not ruining this state. And they held the line for 30, 40 years, where every other state, they lost, and the
just got
hunters
picked
just
apart.
rolled over, and or the hunters didn't even know.
Well, that was the thing.
And
We're finding out more and more. I mean, even per what you said, and again, we're not in Iowa, but we'll talk with Mike Yoder from Deer Drone about like these bills are hitting the Senate, and it's like we're pretty in tune with the industry, and we have no freaking clue these things exist. The Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt Archery.
Dude, where would we be without our Hoyt bows?
Probably shooting crossbows.
or a Matthews, yeah.
One and the same.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we love being Hoyt guys because you stand out. When you're in this room full of other people that shoot these other types of bows, I feel like the Hoyt guys just stick out.
Dude, it's just a legit bow. I mean, especially that carbon riser, man. I mean, I know that they've got several other aluminum lines as well, but for me, I'm shooting that RX-5 in the carbon model. They've since come out with the RX-7, and I can't tell you how much I love being a Hoyt guy amongst a sea full of Matthews guys. So we're out there, I think, proving them wrong, shooting 80 pounds and, killing stuff.
Hey, man, if you want to get serious, get Hoyt.
Two quick things. Iowa uniquely, you have all these people who said Iowa's the last great place, and I want to go there. And a lot of these people are I'm friends with them, or I know them, whatever. But I'm going to go to Iowa and make my business. I'm going to film hunts, or I'm going to have a great big farm, and I'm going to be a hunting celebrity, if that's what you call it. And most of my friends who are hunting celebrities laugh at that. They're like, I don't want to be a hunting celebrity. You that do want to be hunting celebrities, it's kind of like,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
It's corny, but it's like, hey man, you've made your living and you've had all of your success, and this state has given you opportunities that no other state, you couldn't dream of them in other states. It is in my opinion, it's your duty to speak up against the people and the special interests that are just looking to exploit this state, and that will ruin this state just for their little slim interests, usually that revolves around money. You folks need to speak up about this, and more people are getting more vocal about this. More people are understanding this. So that's a good thing. And I've talked to several of these people lately, like, hey, you made all of your success off of this state.
Right.
You gotta do something. You gotta give back, man. And they're like, I'm in. And I'll give you a classic example. Some buddies of mine that are from Minnesota, and a lot of my neighbors are from Minnesota, and they're like, well, we came to Iowa because our state sucks, because we ruined our state.
Yeah.
And some of my buddies from Minnesota, it was just like a month ago, were saying, do you realize that Minnesota used to be the #1 B and C state in the country in like the 80s or early 90s or something? It was something like that. And I might have my dates wrong a little bit. I go, what? #1 in B and C? Yeah, like giants. And my buddy's like, dude, I used to see 200s. I'd see mammoths, even up north. We'd see giants. We'd shoot giants. They'd shoot bomber after bomber. I'm like, Minnesota? Wait, all you guys are down here from Minnesota because it sucks. And they're like, yeah, it was great 20 and 30 years ago. It sucks now. It's horrible now. And I'm like, what happened? The same thing happened. All these regulations went in. More this, more that, more seasons, more tags, more weapons. And that state went from the #1 B and C state in the country, and I might be off a little bit here, but
to the #1 license plate we see in every other state.
Yeah. And it's like, they're all my neighbors now.
Yeah.
And all my neighbors here are from Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. And here's another one. A lot of my neighbors, they're from Illinois.
Jeez.
Wow.
And then I'm right by the Missouri border. I have neighbors in Iowa that drive across from Missouri and buy land in Iowa.
Yep.
And it's like, you go across that line over there, which isn't far from my house here, and it looks just as good.
Yep.
The genetics are amazing. It has the equal potential. But it's
state regulations are different.
It's not even close.
Yeah.
I mean, you go across that line.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Over the counter, man. I can go and hunt that place over the counter.
Rifles during the middle of the rut.
Yeah.
Seriously.
That's
rifles. And there has been some states, DNR or legislators that have reached out to me, and they're like, hey, and I'll bottom line what they want to talk about. They're like, I need some help. I want to be informed. I'm not a hunter. I followed you on some things. I've seen, a few things you've done with the Iowa legislature, whatever, but I'll make a long story short. They're like, could you make a proposal or discuss with us something that would increase the revenue for our state and at the same time increase the quality of hunting? Could we have both? And I'm like, yes, you could have both. You can do both of these. And when people say your state is a quality state and they want to come there, more people are going to be excited. Residents, even your residents, and that's the main one you want to excite. The hunting's back, it's getting better. We're doing things to improve it. So, there is ways to both increase revenue, which the government loves to say that we want to increase revenue, and make the hunting better. So it's a win-win for everybody. Yeah. And really with this stuff, there isn't any losers here because somebody's like, oh, you're just a trophy hunter or whatever. And they'll throw that out kind of as a negative. It's like, no, I'm not a trophy hunter. I'm someone who wants to chase older deer. And simple biology tells us that when you have a balanced age structure with mature deer in it, that is biologically more sound than a deer herd where all the young bucks get gunned down and the young bucks do the breeding. I mean, a balanced age structure is biologically proven to be better. And I don't care if that mature buck has a 120-inch rack or 180-inch rack. Just the fact that you have some mature animals.
Yep.
Who wouldn't want to have a few mature animals in the herd? It doesn't mean like that's what everybody shoots, but a lot of states don't have those mature animals. And the guys that are like, well, I still just want to shoot a year-and-a-half-old buck. Okay, you can still do that if there's mature animals. If we set up the regulations so some deer can get by, the guys who want to shoot, and I've said this before in a couple of the videos that I've done or discussions I've had. The guys that want to shoot the year-and-a-half-old bucks or the 2.5-year-old bucks, they're forever going to have that opportunity. The people who actually are losing opportunities right now, which is a catchword that everybody wants to talk about, is the guy that actually says, I want to hunt for a little bit older animal, and I want this to be a little more challenging. Those are the guys that are hurting for opportunity.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. And I mean, it is probably because they're not hunters. They don't understand the outdoor. They don't understand how the system works biologically and from a social side of it. But I think ultimately the mindset has been nearly viral of opportunity. And again, it's all in the side of lengthened seasons, tag allocations, weapons, whatever. But clearly access is the biggest issue here. And yes, there's some paying attention to it, right? There's certain states, we hunt the plots in North Dakota, which is awesome. There's some other states, obviously Kansas has got walk-in areas that's private land open to, there are some things being done. Pennsylvania's got a good game cooperative thing, but ultimately it's still, let's say you want to increase hunter numbers. You're trying to jam 10 pounds of shit into a 5-pound bag, right? It doesn't work. So even if you want to increase your hunter numbers, right, where the hell are you going to put them?
Okay, now think of it this way. It's not a perfect analogy, but it just popped into my head. So you say everybody rightfully says oftentimes public land is ruined, it's degraded, it's overrun. Fine, I agree. Well, there's a lot of lakes that are like that too. Even in Michigan, it's like everything got fished out. Okay? Yep. Well, there's a few lakes that will make unique regulations to their lake. They'll say, hey, you can only keep so many fish and they have to be in this slot limit. If they're over this, you got to throw them back. And they make it very restrictive. Where does the public want to go fishing? They all want to go to those lakes. Why? Because it is substantially better. And the public can show up there. And oftentimes it becomes pretty close to catch and release. And you go, there's a lot of dudes fishing there. It is public access, but the fishing's really good. And you're like, why is the fishing good on this lake, but it sucks on that lake? Mm-hmm. They look the same because the regulations and the slot limits and all the tag limits and stuff are just more restrictive on that lake. And that actually makes it better.
Yep. Same reason we all want to come to Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing.
There have been some public lands have done it. Like, so it was when I lived in Mississippi for almost 5 years. And a lot of the wildlife management areas there, you only got in via draw. And so you would have to put in a draw before the season, right? It's public land, but you had to put in a draw for early season. Most of those, I had to kill a doe before my buck tag was active. And dude, you want to talk about, it would have rivaled any of the private lands around there. I mean, some of the biggest bucks I saw in that state were on these WMAs where there were draw access to. And the amount of people who wanted to hunt them was through the roof. But if you didn't get drawn, can't hunt it.
Well, why was it through the roof? It was through the roof because it was quality.
Because it was so good. So, everybody knew it.
Yeah, and we can do that here too. I mean, if you restrict things in some fashion, and there's all sorts of different ways to do this, it will make people want to hunt there more.
Yeah.
Or, appreciate it too. Like, hey, I'm going into a piece of public land where the access is restricted. Maybe I'm not going to just go shoot a 1.5-year-old buck. They'll know it, and they'll appreciate the fact that, hey, this public is actually uniquely a good piece of public because they restrict it. So I'm going to actually go in there and not shoot a 1.5 years or 2.5, and I'm going to try for a better animal. And it's just like a snowball effect where it just keeps getting better for everybody. Everybody benefits from that. So, I'm not a big regulation person. I'm a small government person, but and I've listened to your podcast in the past on that. I mean, regulation is the key. It's the key.
You have
Good regulations is the key to quality deer management and to having a balanced age structure and truly having opportunities for all different classes of hunters. I mean, regulations is fundamental. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here and it's a broken record, but no regulations. Do you want to know what that results in? That results in the resource being wiped out.
Yeah, gone.
And that's what Iowa was 50, 60 years ago. There was no deer here.
Yeah.
And we've watched the pheasant numbers go from people used to travel here by the loads to pheasant hunt to nobody pheasant hunts.
Yeah.
I mean, so we've seen all these different states or different types of hunting go down in a matter of a decade or two. And there's nothing to say deer can't do the same thing because it has before. And in some places it has again, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen in Iowa.
Do you think it's salvageable, like in states that, like, to Jeremy and I, it seems like are so far gone, like the Pennsylvanias, the Minnesotas, the Michigans, like,
yes.
You're talking about Iowa, a state that we're all, looking through the glass, and I wish we could go there, but even Iowa's got its issues. What about
these states could get fixed? These states could, and I'm not saying that Pennsylvania is going to be like Iowa. Okay?
Sure.
I'm not saying that. But whatever Pennsylvania is at now, it could be immensely better. And I could go through, Michigan could be immensely better. Now, if you let me, and I've had some fun on this with online. I call myself the deer dictator. And I'm like, here's what the deer dictator would do for all these laws in these different states. But if I could enact the laws in Michigan, which I'm not going to, but if I could make it so Michigan, and people be like, no, too many hunters, and they'll poo-poo it and say, no, there's reasons it won't work. Yes, I could make it, or the people of Michigan could make it where that state is better than Iowa. There's 5 to 10, I'd have to look at the exact stat, but 5 to 10 times the cover. There's 2, 3, 4 times the amount of deer numbers. Yes, there's more hunters, but there's also way more habitat and way more premium habitat with good fertility, especially in that southern third of the state, where Michigan, the potential there is astronomical.
Yeah.
So all these states could be immensely better, immensely. And there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it. And I'll get into that next. Now, the first thing is it has to be fairly simple. For me to go into Michigan and be like, hey, I'm the deer dictator, I'm going to change everything. That's not practical, of course. So I'd only want to do 1 or 2 things. And most of these states, I know Ohio doesn't fit into this boat. Ohio actually does things pretty well. I mean, I'd love to get rid of the crossbows. I'd love to get rid of the bait.
Well, dude, Jeremy and I talk about Ohio a lot. Like when you say, oh, they're one change away from being like the best state in the country, Ohio is that for us. And
Ohio could take all the spotlight off of Iowa, and Ohio has some spotlight on it because it is good even the way it sits. I know you guys are frustrated, and I know a lot of people are frustrated, but it's way better than Michigan. Way better. So, Ohio, absolutely. If you could say, hey, we the people, we the hunters, we want crossbows in their specific season, not in archery season. They can have their own season. We're not against crossbows, but we want them in their own season.
I think there's lower hanging fruit, dude. I mean, for us in Ohio, it's baiting. I think leave the crossbows, fine.
There's my next one right there is get rid of the bait. Okay, so you get rid of the bait and you get rid of the crossbows in Ohio. That state dominates Iowa. It will be better than Iowa. Michigan, very simple. Hey guys, we don't need to do antler point restrictions. We don't. Are they beneficial? Sure. But it's not a game changer. They need a game changer. And it's as simple as this. Hey guys, 14 days out of the year, I want you to move that gun season back 14 days. 14 days. Some years on December 1, it's warm. Some years it's really cold. 14 days does not change a whole lot. It's just a date on a calendar. Move it back 14 days. Get the guns out of the rut. Michigan would blow through the roof. Well, there's all these stubborn people that will never go for it. Fine. I mean, and I'm not, these things are hard to do. But
that's one element of it, Skip, is, on all these things, they have to be enforceable, whether it's enforceable or everybody's got to really be on board with it. Like the baiting in Ohio thing is a perfect example of we can propose that, but then you have all this ripple effect of well, farmers are making a tremendous amount of money off of that. What happens with those people? Is it like a taking guns from the people situation where all of the criminals are going to continue to bait, right? And it's just going to still have that influence.
We have to look at the overall picture, though. The overall net effect is that everybody in the state of Ohio would benefit from not having bait. Maybe the farmers would lose a little bit of money. They'd still be fine. But as far as managing the resource and managing the quality of the herd, everyone would benefit from getting rid of bait.
Yeah.
And even from a biology standpoint, I mean, baiting is clearly not ideal. It's not ideal what it does to, pulling that bait away when the season gets nasty. You're like, well, I'm done hunting. I mean, and what it does to the ecosystem and the browse, stuff like that. So, overall, everyone wins with a few exceptions, but the vast majority of people win if you remove baiting, if you remove crossbows. And in Michigan, if you move that season back 2 weeks, and I would argue, hey man, if somebody's like, hey, you get a second one, you get a second wish, I'd be like, $1. You guys tell us you have an army of hunters, and it's a smaller army since everybody's quitting. Make it $1. Make Michigan $1. And some people be like, I'm pulling my hair out. I'm freaking out what this guy's saying. It's fine, but it would benefit everybody, and that state would blow up. And here's the deal. If you made it $1 and you move that gun season back 2 weeks, I'm just saying it how it is. 3 or 4 years later, all the hunters would be like, thank you.
Yeah.
Don't change it back.
Dude,
almost unanimously, people would be like, do not change it back to the way it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In the spirit of compromise, I mean, Jeremy and I have circled because Ohio's a big deal. We both have property there. We see baiting as an issue, even though, we feel forced to do it ourselves sometimes, and we have taken part in that.
I get it.
We look at things that if we're looking at Iowa and saying man, what is Iowa doing right that we're doing wrong? I think I would be in favor of trading baiting for adding an additional buck tag for landowners. Absolutely. No, I don't want to necessarily give landowners a tag. Just here you go. But if I were to offer that up as a trade for baiting, I think that'd be a great trade.
So here's the interesting thing is you said you have to compromise, and as hunters over the last 30 years, there's been no compromise. We've always receded ground. We've always been pushed back.
Yeah.
So there's been no compromise when it goes the other way. We just have to get rolled over.
Yep.
So at one point, hunters at some point, and this will happen with the younger generation that gets it far better than the old school generation that are just beyond stubborn. The younger people understand this vastly better than the older people. They just do. So there has to be a point where hunters go, listen, we've given in. We've been rolled over for decades. Let's go on offense. Let's get a few things changed in our favor. And let's just be honest. The weapons have gotten more effective. They're far more deadly. The seasons are longer. There's more weapon choices. But the seasons are even longer. I would argue, hey, if your weapons are vastly more effective, wouldn't you reduce the seasons a little bit?
You would think so. You would think so.
But by definition, then, hunters are always giving ground up. And what people can do in their states is the exact same thing that Raven Crossbows is doing, or the insurance companies that hate deer. All these people are doing is they're hiring lobbyists to get their special interest needs through. So here's my question. If insurance companies and crossbow companies and rifle companies can hire lobbyists for fairly affordable rates, why can't hunters get together and hire a lobbyist to promote and to go on offense for the issues that they feel are important to them? Because they haven't been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years. Iowa's the only one place that has lobbyists that defends us. And if you want to talk real numbers, like Iowa or Ohio, to hire a lobbyist to say, you know what, lobbyists, we are sportsmen. We care about our resource. We want it to be better for everybody. We're not doing this to make money, because you're not. To change the regulations, that's not going to make money for you to get baiting gone, right? Right? I mean, but we are hiring a lobbyist, and it sounds bad, but that's what all these other people are doing. You could hire a lobbyist for $30,000 to $40,000 a year and say, we are hiring you, if you get the right one, we're hiring you so you can lobby the legislators in our state to get rid of baiting. And here's the reasons why. 1, disease. 2, what it does to the ecosystem. 3, for sportsman's-like reasons, just getting back to woodsmanship. I mean, whatever it may be. But there's a strong argument to get rid of baiting, and there's as strong of an argument to get rid of baiting as they have to add this crazy new weapon to our season, or they just proposed air bows in our state.
Is that cross guns?
What's an air bow? Yeah, they're bow and arrows that are a gun that shoots an arrow with air.
Yep.
Jeez.
Well, there's just as much merit. They hired a lobbyist to do that. Well, if they can hire a lobbyist to do that, here's the thing: is there might be a lot of people in your state, and there is, that are like, hey, I'm a younger hunter, I can't do that, but I could pitch in $25. But for people who are like, hey, I'm doing fine, I'm doing okay, you could get 30 of your buddies who are doing okay, that are like, hey, I'm 50, I've got a business, I'm fine, I'm gonna pitch in $1,000 towards this.
Yep.
And 30, maybe 40 guys, and you start an organization that says, we want to make the hunting in Ohio better. Well, dude, the hunting in Pennsylvania better. This can happen.
In a state like Ohio, Skip, with the right promotion, like I think $30,000, $40,000 could be pretty easily achieved, like in a couple weeks. I gotta believe there are people out. I mean, if you put out a GoFundMe and say, hey, listen,
you pull out your cell phone. You pull out your cell phone and go, oh yeah, that guy I know that's 50, that is my really good friend that loves Ohio. He loves chasing mature deer. That's doing fine. I mean, not a gazillionaire, but he's doing okay.
Yep.
He gets a new truck. He gets a new bow every. Wonder if he'd contribute. You text him. Say, hey, can we talk about this? 30 to 40 buddies, you could get it done. And you could fight fire with fire. And you don't realize this is fire that's been used against hunters for decades.
Yeah.
And we need to utilize the same tactics.
We talked about it last year, man. Embarrassed is not the right word. We just we lost, fuel on it. But like, dude, it's every year. Like that gun season comes and goes, and it's like we just find ourselves in a state of depression. It's like, dude, what am I doing? Like every year, that's like, the couple of kids, that are hunting. It's like, their first year they baited it, and there's these 3 and 4 year olds are getting killed, and nothing against like that, those kids in that situation. But we're like, dude, this has to change. Like, and we talked for a while about like, is it a petition? Like, who do we, how, you know, it just seems like it's not even possible. Who would you talk to about?
It's possible.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, now that I've been in the system, like working with the system, I'm not a part of the system. Nobody, I don't have any money involved in this. I don't have anybody pushing me. I don't have sponsors. I don't want them. I don't want anybody persuading me for any nefarious reason. I'm here because I care about this stuff. I'm in the system and I know how it works now. And I'm telling you, multiple states throughout this country can change their state. And it's going to start with the same ways that things got changed against what they wanted and not in their favor. How those things got changed, that's how things will get fixed through the same process. And it will be, you know, starting up a little very simple nonprofit organization, having a core foundation of goals and beliefs. And this is what we're here for, the Ohio Sportsmen's Alliance, whatever you want to call it, and hiring a lobbyist. And literally, I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying it's very doable. 30 or 40 guys could fix Ohio. They could make that state jump. I mean, for management, opportunities for everybody, for balanced age structure, for all the problems that the passionate hunters complain about, it can be fixed. And the same goes, a lot of people are like, no way, impossible. No, it's not impossible. Some of these states won't fix, and it won't be fixed, but some of them will. This can happen in Michigan. This can happen in Minnesota. It can happen in Wisconsin. I mean, things got done against those states to the hunters' disfavor, and that can be reversed. And there is a process for it. It is not a petition. It's not getting frustrated about it, being stressed out during gun season, being like, please let it end. Please let it end. Nothing like that's going to do it. Getting organized with a group of guys, and I'm going to say it, hiring a lobbyist, which is actually very affordable. If you can find the right one, which is very important. It's just like anything. It's like hiring the right person for a job. It has to be the right person. If you can do that, it's very effective. And that is how all these special interests are getting the things through that we don't like. Like, oh my gosh. And Iowa just was hammered with an onslaught. 8 bills this year that were a disaster. Rifles for turkeys, cross guns, air cross guns, whatever the heck they were.
Rifles for
more
turkeys?
Outfitter tags, the auction tags. Every landowner in Iowa, which is who owns everything, gets 2 tags to auction off to the highest bidder. I got to debate that one at the Capitol. I got to debate that.
I mean, that one right there would have single-handedly killed Iowa. It would ruin the state. It would ruin this state. That one alone would ruin this state. And what do they want there, Skip? They want more money?
They want well, there's a group. There's 5 to 10 guys that are like, hey, we want to be able to hunt there. How can we get this done? They talk to lobbyists and the lobbyists give them the ideas. And that's how Raven Crossbows gets their legislation proposed too, because they're like, hey, lobbyists, we want to hire you. Okay, we'll take your money. We want crossbows during archery season right now. And the lobbyists go, can't do it right now. Why? Because the hunters are going to stop you. So they'll say, here's what we do though. We're going to put 5 other bills through that are far lesser. You know, they look great. They sound great. And they're just little stepping stones. It's going to take 3 years. It's going to take an investment, but this is how we get there. There's a process for it. So hunters can do the same thing. And why shouldn't hunters do the same thing as, you know, and we're doing this, in my opinion, for good reasons, for moral reasons, for biological reasons, you know. And I think hunters across the Midwest are tired of their states that have great potential just being ruined every year. Ruined. I mean, when November 15 hits, when I'm in my tree stand in Iowa, November 15 hits, I'm like, November 15, every deer in Michigan just died.
Yeah, same with
sad moment
Wisconsin and Missouri and all of them. Yeah, blitzed.
Yeah, my buddies in Minnesota are like, I'm out rifle hunting. I'm like, rifle hunting?
Yeah.
It's early bow season. I got a month left.
Yeah.
You guys got rifles out already? that stuff can be changed. People are like, no way, impossible. It's not impossible. It can be done. And this is the process for it.
I think I read that article this morning. I mean, you see they're going back and forth on this Saturday versus Monday start. Like it's Pennsylvania is like, it seems like so far in the woods about like whether the gun season should start on Monday or Saturday.
We can't even hunt on Sunday.
It's like who freaking cares? That's terrible here anyways. Like, can't we do something to fix the deer hunting first and then decide what day it starts on?
It's always been something that's just disturbing in the fact that, and here's I guess where part of our issue is in this state and several other states I know too is we've got this 3-year rule, it seems like, meaning we can't get the data of what happened until 3 years after to get an average, right? So like if I wanted to say, hey, Skip, 2 years ago was the first Sunday or 3 years ago was the first Sunday we could ever hunt with a gun, right? How many deer got killed that Sunday? Well, give me 3 years and I'll tell you the average.
You're telling me the government is inefficient?
Seems that way. But shouldn't that be my right to know? Like as a licensed holder in the state, as a taxpayer in the state, shouldn't they have to say like, yeah, Jeremy, here you go. We killed whatever, $9,000 on that day.
They should do that, and you can get that fixed. Just because government is inefficient, broken, and has poor regulations, by no stretch of the imagination does that mean it has to stay that way.
Sure.
This is how our system is designed. It is designed to evolve, to change, to adapt. And right now, there's a lot of places across the Midwest that are degraded, they're poor, they're ran disastrously. And as the citizens of these states, it's almost our duty to figure out ways to improve them.
Yeah.
And improve them for the new generations. And I want things to improve in other states. Like I'm talking about Ohio here. I might not ever hunt in Ohio again in my life, but I'd love to see it if you guys said, man, hey, guess what, Skip? 5 years ago we talked and some things have changed. It's not going to go overnight.
Sure.
But hey, some things have changed and our hunting's gotten considerably better for everybody.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear that. Minnesota, I'm never going to hunt there.
Man,
but to hear that.
How cool would that be? I can't remember the last time I heard that. It's only gotten worse. Gotten worse.
So me at 16 or 14 when I started hunting to 25 years old, I loved this. I loved it. I was eaten up with it, and I still am. So I think of the kids who are like me that are eaten up with this, that are passionate about it, that are hungry for good quality hunting, for just a dream experience, and some of these kids, it's not even the vast majority. It's not even a possibility. Well, that's my duty. And that's what I want to do. And that's what a lot of other hunters want to do, is change the system so we can fix it for this younger generation. And we have the opportunity right now. And just because it's been flushed down the tubes does not mean we cannot fix it, because we can. And there's a process to do it.
Well, the lobbyist thing is really interesting. I mean, I know that Jeremy and I'd love to stay in touch. And dude, if you're willing to kind of show us the way or show us the model.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Absolutely. I've learned this process over the last 3 years and just becoming more involved. And now other states are reaching out to me saying, hey, I'm not an expert on this stuff. And I'm not saying I know everything on these things. I don't. But I've been in this for 30 years. This is all I do. And I don't have a hidden motive.
Sure.
I just want things better for everybody. So, people can find negative things to comment on, and I see it in the hunting industry all the time. People find negativity on anything. This is all positive for me,
Yeah.
There's no hidden motivations. I want to see hunting better across the whole country.
Yep.
For everybody.
And let's be honest. I mean, there'll be people listening that are going to say this, so we might as well, we're not going to make everybody happy, right? There's plenty of guys.
Absolutely not.
There's plenty of crossbow guys listening to this saying, some bitches back at it again, and that's
that guy. That's what the
crossbow
crossbow lobbyist said to me.
Yeah.
Look at this guy over here.
Yeah.
Hates crossbows. I'm like, I don't hate crossbows.
Yeah.
And the rifle people, we got into it with the Iowa Firearms Coalition that is there for Second Amendment rights. I'm for the Second Amendment. I'm for it. But all of a sudden they go out of their lane and they say, no. You need rifles in Iowa for deer hunting. That's what your organization's for?
Right.
You guys don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you're anti-rifle. I'm not anti-rifle. I have rifles.
Yeah.
Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
I know deer management. You guys don't, and they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. They know Second Amendment. Great. I support you with the Second Amendment. I own rifles. I'm not anti-rifle. I'm anti-rifle in deer season. Yeah. It will ruin this deer season. It will ruin Iowa. We don't want high-power rifles. But, their organization says, well, we could sell a lot of rifles.
Well, and listen, there's already loopholes, right? I mean, there's guys killing deer at 800 yards with muzzleloaders in the state of Iowa right now.
Yeah, and I understand that. And the way it sits right now, it's such a small piece of the pie.
Yeah.
Is it a problem? Sure. And there's all these loopholes in Iowa, like party hunting or, landowners can shoot $3. I mean, we have problems too. Don't misunderstand. Iowa has things that I'm like, it is bad, but it's just it's a small percentage of the pie that does stuff like that. Now, if you're like, well, a fraction of the pie uses these muzzleloaders that cost $5,000 or $3,000 or whatever they cost, and they can shoot out here and they go through all this effort to do it. So let's have it so everybody does that with high powers.
Yeah.
That's just going to make it worse. Leave it be.
Yeah.
It's not a huge problem the way it is. There are regulations that are problematic in Iowa.
Yeah.
But, I mean, for really in a nutshell for Iowa, just leave us be.
Yeah.
Leave us alone. Don't touch the regulations. That's really all we're asking for, really.
Well,
leave us alone.
I feel like you guys are kind of a can of gas as it is because of party hunting, because of all the multiple buck tags as landowners. If something like, oh, hey, crossbows all the time or whatever it might be comes back into play, or like lengthened seasons, you guys have already set a baseline where it is pretty liberal in terms of the way that the season structure is set up. So now you drop that match into the gas can and shit blows up pretty quick.
Yeah. And, we've had a lot of problems here, and some of it's not regulation related, and I know you guys can relate to this one, but right north of my farm in 2019, we had an EHD come through, and I went with one of the biologists, and he said, hey, we're in a pocket right here. Yeah. It's 100% gone. Like, I don't think a single deer made it. And then we got into some areas that were 80% losses. So this hit a big swath north of me, Lucas County, Warren, into Monroe, where you guys are talking. You guys are actually timing it where things are finally actually recovering. And
we did that on purpose.
That's a big hit. It's a big hit for hunters to face. Like, hey, I've been managing my farm for 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so excited about this hunting season. All of a sudden you go out one day and you're like,
oh, I know.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's
Ohio
gone.
got hit last year. Several of the counties, especially Western Ohio, got hammered last year with it.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, it's a bad thing. And I mean, I sat there and talked to all the biologists I can talk to. My buddies are veterinarians. I've got one that works in I'm not into this, but they work in like a high fence situation with deer. And I just asked them questions about EHD. And I've spent just years researching EHD, as I have CWD. And I don't want to get into that whole can of worms. I don't need to. You guys did a great episode the other day, but obviously two very different issues. But what EHD has done to Iowa, incredible. And when I meet with the biologist that says, hey, we found a live deer, and I don't quite know why this part is important, but we found a live deer and we were able to do a blood test. So, okay. They said, this strain that just hit in 19, this is a new strain in Iowa. We haven't seen this before. That's why it's so devastating. The deer do not have immunity to it. This is new for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and back in my early days of starting to learn about EHD, it's like, wait, this is new? Yeah, this is new. Yeah. Well, look back at when the first documented case of EHD was. It's, I might be off a little bit, but it's like 1950s.
Oh, yeah.
You say, well, when's the first documented case of CWD? And I'm not intertwining those two, and I'm not getting into that debate. But you say, well, that's 1960s. Both of these are actually very new. And the new strains of EHD and blue tongue, and I think there's 7 or 8 strains that we see in North America now. These are new. These deer have not experienced these things yet. And I could get into where do they come from? Why are we seeing them?
Sure.
maybe for another day. But
Yeah.
that's a huge problem Iowa's had. It has nothing to do with the regulations, really. What you didn't see the DNR do here is when you had areas that were wiped out, 80%, they didn't reduce the deer quotas.
Right.
Not at all. Not at all. Now, wouldn't it make sense to go, hey, that county got ravaged.
Yes.
Let's drop the quotas down. They didn't do that.
Crazy.
Wait, Skip, Skip, are you saying that the government's inefficient?
Shit, Skip. Well, listen, man, we appreciate you coming on and talking with us. I mean, always good to, the whole point of this podcast for Jared and I, one, was to talk to other people passionate about whitetails and everything about it. But it's also to actually put out there in public, again, opinions, but discussions that are around things that we don't hear other people talking about in public.
The people you watch, the hunters you watch, I don't want to film my hunts. I don't. I've been asked for decades. I don't want to do it. But the people filming their hunts that have made their money off of your state or Iowa, and when they know there's forces that are working against it, you need to ask those people where they stand on these issues.
Sure.
Because if they've made their way and made their bed from states like Iowa, they should be doing at least a few things to say, hey, guys, they're set. I mean, they're set financially, they're set with their ground, but they should at least be able to say, hey, guys, going to make you aware of some things that are going on that are ruining my state. And the people viewing those hunters and those groups need to be kind of holding their feet to the fire and asking them, where do you stand on these issues?
Yeah.
Very important, because they have a big microphone.
I definitely sense, Skip, just from the people that we've talked to, that there is there's a growing unrest with the way that these states are being run, whether it's Ohio or Iowa, or like there's quite a few hunters out there, I think, that are frustrated with like the public land system, the lack of access that they have, the liberalization of seasons. They're just like we are, lacking, I think, direction and structure for how to, approach the states with these issues. And I think you've kind of given us a taste of maybe the direction we can go with that.
There's a direction to go. There's solutions here. The future is good. The future is positive. This younger generation is very well connected and educated on these issues, far better than what is in our rearview mirror with our people my folks' age and so on. So there's some very good things that will be happening here. Not maybe for everybody in every state, but I'm the last person on earth that's going to be Debbie Downer here. I mean, there's some threats and there's some issues, and I'm a fighter, a positive fighter, a fighter with a smile on my face, but the future is bright and we have a path to do it now. And I mean, it's probably more complex of a discussion than we've got into, but not a lot more. I mean, there is a very viable path across the Midwest for any one of these states and any group of hunters to improve the situation they're sitting in right now. And
Awesome.
The future's bright.
Good to hear it.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on and talking with us, and we'll be sure to catch up with you.
Hope it won't be the last time, Skip. You're welcome back anytime, man.
Deal, man. Thanks for having me.
The Hunter Podcast is brought to you by Stealth Cam.
Dude, where would we be without our cell cams?
I would definitely be divorced at this point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I mean, the fact is I spent more time checking cameras than I actually did hunting prior to cell cameras. Now, at least, my wife can enjoy me being in the comfort of my own home, buried in my phone, checking those pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, when it comes to trail cameras and definitely cell cameras, reliability is, I think, the number one thing that we're looking for. Stealth Cam just has a long reputation of reliable cameras, and ultimately that is the most important thing to us. They have to work.
In terms of reliability, there's not a better camera on the market than Stealth Cam, whether you're talking about the Fusion X, the Reactor, or the DS4K Transmit. And most of them are under $200.
StealthCam.com. Check them out.
And awesome.
Yeah, no, it was really good.
Yeah, Skip's a super guy and obviously passionate. It's cool to kind of hear those, rally cries almost in some of those areas. And I know there's going to be people listening to this who are, inevitably going to have things to say or be pissed off about, like, don't change this, or not everybody wants to kill giant bucks, and because it's going to happen.
That's a lie. Yeah.
I call that bullshit. I don't say that necessarily, because obviously people can be happy killing just a good buck or whatever. But if you were given the chance to kill bigger bucks or older bucks, would you not be happy about that? And there are people that will say, no, it doesn't matter to me.
Well, and it's like, not just bigger bucks. I mean, I thought Skip did a good job of saying, I mean, that's a biologically balanced herd. It should have mature age class animals in it. Whether you want to hunt them or not is for you to decide. But
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, dude, honestly, pretty inspiring. You know what I mean? To hear somebody taking action at a on a political level, to actually like address some of the things that are being proposed, and like it seems like we've talked so much about like deer hunting getting worse. Like it's just like, and it's not like,
well, how do you fix it? And how do guys like us or guys listening, how do you individually, I mean, the solution for a lot of us is, we just try to make our properties better or whatever.
Yeah, we insulate and
But again, deer have no boundaries. They can go off our property, and so we can't protect them. And it's,
and also that's what it turns it into a rich man's sport, because it's like, well, who can afford land to insulate?
I thought he made it a really good point there, in that these opportunistic laws and bills and regulations that are being put forth to hopefully apply more opportunity to hunters are really creating a much more, restrictive access response, because immediately the response for guys who live and breathe deer hunting are, well, shit, man, we got to lock up everything we can because they're going to ruin this for us. Whereas their thought is, we're just going to make it so much more liberal and opportunities everywhere. And immediately those people may have different weapons to use, longer seasons, bag limits, but they got nowhere to hunt. There's nowhere to go, right? Or you go to the already overexploited public land. That's not going to be a successful trip. And so those people fall off. And so open opportunity is actually losing hunters, right? It is working against the whole R3 program. And this is where, like, I don't know if people are sitting there, and I don't say this to be mean, but I do think that this is a direct result of putting people in charge of game and fish laws who are not hunters or fishermen.
Yeah.
100%. If you don't understand how hunting works and you don't understand the domino effect, and you just think, well, if I do this, there's more opportunity, there's more chances for people to hunt, and you then scratch your head why hunting numbers are going to fall off the face of the earth, you're an idiot.
Well, or just uninformed. You know what I mean? I think so. Skip's taking a stance of like, hiring somebody to be speaking to the politicians, like on behalf of hunters, and admittedly, like, I guess all of us would probably say like, oh, I didn't know we needed to do that. Like, I thought like,
well, I mean, you thought the Game Commission did this, and in certain cases, the Game Commission does change. Like, I think in a bag limit situation, the Game Commission changes those. However, in like a Sunday hunting situation, that's on the legislator here in the state of Pennsylvania. In a lot of the states, and I know, the Game Commission, when we had them on, addressed it. They call them these kind of super agencies, right? These DNR super agencies. It is the legislature that is making all the rules the whole way down. Mm-hmm. Pennsylvania isn't like that, although some things are greatly influenced by the legislature that are not under the control of Game or Fish Commission.
Well, that's when we talked to Brian Burns, the PA Game, and I asked him about like the how did crossbows come about, and he basically pointed at like the legislature that
changed the law of what defined archery equipment.
That defined crossbows as archery equipment. And he's like, yes, our hands are clean, basically. And I was like, what?
Because they have an archery season. They can't infect that. And this is where, again, no knock to the state legislature. You don't know what the hell you're doing. Like, you're being lobbied to do something that you think, and you're not consulting an agency in that format to say, hey, how's this going to affect our deer numbers or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, and, honestly, they're probably looking at it just from a general perspective. And, hunters, we're just one group, right? And so, like, I mean, I'll take some of the blame of, like, and honestly, I think it's not out of laziness or like we just we don't know like how to have influence in these areas.
I don't think in a lot of these cases, we talked about this with Mike Yoder, but they don't want you to know, right?
That definitely seems like the case.
These bills and these things that are going to change law, you'll have public opinion periods. Those meetings don't matter. I'm sorry, they don't.
I know that.
It happens only at the floor where the law is being changed. And they don't want you to know because they don't want it to be stirred. They've already have a pathway. The lobbyists have a pathway. They're not going to go out there and market it on the news or on Facebook and say, hey, guys, just so you know, SB, state bill, blah, 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 is going through and it's doing this. No, they don't want you to know that.
Yeah.
And that's not just in hunting. That's in everyday life of politics.
Right.
That even though they are to represent us, the constituents, they're there to make the decision. Basically, they're there to represent that they know what's best for us. That is where the opposition of government interaction and engagement and influence is too much, in my opinion, on a lot of things. One person's supposed to represent this entire section of people and know what's best for them. No.
Yeah.
So to your point earlier, like, man, if we did a petition on this, get all these signatures, then what? Like, nothing. Doesn't do anything.
Seems like nothing.
Does nothing. You know, it literally is to the point of hiring a lobbyist to go on the floor to make these decisions. At any given time, you know, if you're really defensive of your state or of whitetail, and maybe it's a national thing, right? Maybe it's a group of lobbyists who work multiple states on behalf of the whitetail side that essentially a group is paying for to say, hey, our goal is to make sure that this resource continues to thrive, that it biologically it's a balanced age structure, and that we're preventing things like disease and things like that from ruining hunting and everything else.
Yeah.
And that group is out there lobbying for this stuff. And in some cases, you know, you're going to win some battles. In some cases, you're going to lose some battles. But I would judge right now that in a lot of these states, there are things happening that, shit, as deer hunters, we have no idea that they're getting passed. All of a sudden, we get it the booklet, and we're like, when the hell did this become a law?
Yeah.
Case in point, cell cameras in Kansas.
Yeah.
What? All of a sudden, it was like, hey, these are illegal.
Yeah.
And on public, what?
Who voted for that?
Yeah, when did you get asked about this? Like, I hunt there a lot. Did you? No.
Right. Yeah, man, we need to organize for sure.
And that's where, again, I know we've talked about it, and I know even with this, people are going to say, oh, you're picking on crossbow hunters. Okay, cool. If there is a time and a place for a united front, it's in some of these spaces. Now, there will be differences of opinions. Gun hunters will want gun seasons in the rut. Crossbow hunters will want crossbow and archery season. Some people may want baiting. So there will obviously be odd men out in the group. Again, that's part of it. There's a common focus here, which is we all want to be able to kill deer. We all want to be able to hunt deer, and we all want to be able to be successful and enjoy hunting. That's the commonality. Now, all these things off of it, we've got to come to mutual agreements on.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and just because you have done one thing a certain way doesn't mean that like that's the way it has to be forever. Like just because you've always been a gun hunter,
sure,
right? And if you're feeling ousted because I can't hunt the full season, like you're allowed to buy a bow and hunt during the archery season, right? And so on and so forth. And
just like I may buy a tag to be able to hunt during gun season, but I might not hunt gun season because that's my choice. I don't want to. I want to hunt with a bow.
Right. Yeah, I mean, definitely we'll take some consideration after. I mean, I've got a lot to think about what Skip said, And
the end goal is that we all want to continue to hunt deer for the long term here. And if
we want it to get better.
Well, but if anything, it should scare you the fact that a couple lobbyists can walk into a Senate floor and change multiple bills that will completely ruin hunting as we know it. And
it won't be the first time it's happened, dude. Like, look at what happened to Michigan with the introduction of crossbows. Look at a lot of these northeastern states, dude. It's like we're almost like too far gone.
Yeah.
It's not too late to save some of our good states and make some of these northeastern states, better than they are now.
Yep. So, anyways, that's all we got for you this week. Let that stir, sit on it, understand it, talk about it.
Until next week.
See ya.
Later.
Take me on down the river where the guilt can't find